Now, recess time is over. Back to class. There being no old business or no unfinished business, we now move to new business. New business number one, Councilwoman Killingsworth would like to present, on the town, changes to the town code ordinances.
So we're looking at possible motion to amend Article 3, Section 10-31-35, relating to prohibiting smoking in town parks and prohibiting the use of vaping products and tobacco products in town buildings, vehicles, and parks. As a health professional in my full-time job, I promote health and wellness, good and reasonable choices, and protection of those that are at the mercy of the surrounding environment. After understanding that we do not have a policy in place to address tobacco use in our parks and recreational areas, I felt like this needed to be assessed, compared, and proposed to this council as a reasonable protection of our most vulnerable, and a step in the direction of promoting good choices and good examples for our youth. As presented on page 5, which I believe we got a copy of our Wake County page. The towns of Garner, Holly Springs, Rollsville, Wake Forest, and Wendell have already implemented policies addressing tobacco in their parks and or recreational areas. And Wake County as a whole has a tobacco-free policy as well. And my proposal is that we take a look at the current proposed ordinance and discuss whether or not we want to take a look at passing a tobacco-free Parks and Rec area.
Can I ask?
All right.
Can we do questions?
Yes.
Yes, I'm done.
Yes.
So,
All right.
are you proposing, like on this page, to make the what we currently have as yellow, make that purple, and then add a purple to government-owned parks only, as in tobacco-free? Was that your proposal?
The proposal is to, yes, to make across the area, except for public places, we're not addressing.
In government grounds?
That's my understanding. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay.
So everything but recreational areas and public places be purple?
I believe recreational is also included in this.
Yes. It's parks.
It's considered part of
that.
it.
Fully. Did
you say government grounds also?
No.
That would be the only excluded one, correct?
Government grounds and public places are...
Public places.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Would be excluded.
But everything else would be purple, which
Everything
means
else.
100%.
The way the ordinance draft is written, it's just the named parks. It does not include things like greenway, so which would be considered recreational space.
It does not consider what?
Greenways.
Greenways.
I'm sorry, my microphone wasn't on. My apologies.
So I had a bit of an issue with this. I don't smoke. It's not a personal thing with me. I made the choice in my life not to smoke, and people make the choices in their lives to do whatever they want to do. So I'm a non-smoker, non-tobacco user, so this is not coming from a place of self-dealing for me. However, I've been on the council for 3 years, and I've had 0 complaints. In my email, in my text, in any of my coffee meetings, I've had 0 complaints from anybody about tobacco or even, nicotine, chew, dip, because that's what we're talking about doing. And I believe from the committee conversation we have, Mr. John Brown, who's been here for a lot longer than all of us, well, except for Mr. Jensen maybe, but
I've been here forever.
I believe he's had less than a handful of complaints. Maybe we could ask Mr. Brown if he's had complaints, if this is a major issue for him. Mr. Havens has been here a little bit, longer than me, 4 years, maybe 5 years between his duties as assistant town manager, and I believe if you combine those two individuals, they're less than a handful of complaints. So I don't see this being an issue, and I don't see it a reason for us putting forward a law in Apex when there's really no need for our involvement in it. I understand people's situations, asthma, those types of things, but again, we've had 0 complaints and less than a handful in Mr. Brown's tenure, which is forever, to deal with this. Sorry, Mr. Brown, I love you, but I don't see any reason for us to enact an ordinance, a law in town that government doesn't need to fix. Much less, how are we going to enforce it? If I had Mr. Havens give me the history of what the police chief asked for from staff positionings. I know a big conversation in personnel committee has been burden on staff, challenges that they're faced with. 2016 and 17, he asked for 13 positions, we funded 5. 17-18, he asked for 16, we funded 6. 18-19, he asked for 17, we funded 8. So I think it's safe to say that our police department is operating as efficiently as they can with the positions we are funding. It's not like we have an extra individual to go hang out down at the skate park and enforce a non-tobacco policy, which this would apply to. Is that correct? At the skate park?
Yes.
We can put a sign up, but there's also a sign up there that says, wear helmets and pads. And I challenge anybody, if there's any individual over the age of 6 that's wearing a helmet or pads up there. I've never seen that. Whenever I go up there with my kids, of course, young kids are always wearing that stuff, but what are we going to do? We're going to put a police officer up there to say, here's a ticket, here's a ticket. I'm sure Chief has better things for his police officers to do around town than write tickets for enacting or for breaking the tobacco policy in our town. So I just think this is just way too much. I just don't think we need to do this. I have sympathy for those individuals and things that happen, but we just haven't had any complaints on it. I just don't see a reason to do it, but that's just, my humble opinion. But
Any other thoughts or comments?
I can go next. Thank you, Councilman, for talking about some of the law enforcement, and that is a real question before us. But one thing I was thinking when you were saying about, how we would try to respect the request of the directors and what they need to do their jobs, but I would also say that growth is one of the things that we've also talked about that impacts law enforcement too, and we're not stopping building houses. So, and I'm not suggesting we do, I'm just saying that there are other things that do put stress on law enforcement besides with these type of ordinances. You do bring up a good point related to safety gear, and because I was there for the celebration, very involved in that at the skate park, but I believe there is signage that says that, and but I'm not aware that people are getting tickets for that, and I could be wrong about that, so that might be something we could discuss here, whether I'm wrong about that. But as Councilman Killingsworth talked about her background, my background is in health policy, so I'm not a provider, but I am a member of a ton of coalitions, and groups include American Cancer Society, American Heart Association, Alliance for Health, AARP, a number of groups, and that's just a few out of probably about 40 groups I'm involved with. But the thing I think about this is, while everyone here is my constituent, those who smoke and do not, that I think more about in the parks, I kind of visualize more of a child who doesn't have as much of a voice to then to say to someone, hey, do you mind putting that away? I have asthma. Children just don't typically do that, and they may not be able to move themselves from a situation, so I do think more about people who are being active in the parks more so than anything else. I do like, thinking of this more as an educational campaign about what we want in places where there are children or our staff that have to be subject to this. That's why the anti-smoking bill in the restaurants, that's why it got passed, not because children were in restaurants, but because of the staff who had to be there working and people smoking. That's where that came from. I worked on that, that's how I know. So yeah, I mean, I just feel like there's something that we've got to figure out here, that call it educational campaign. A lot of this stuff is great information that the county has, who are working on public health, which I very much appreciate. And using signs like the beach has, you know, don't leave your plastic bag here, the dolphins can't eat plastic. I mean, it could just be, you know, really child-friendly signs that say, you know, please don't smoke here, I'm here at play, or child at play, or, you know, welcome to the, you know, tobacco-free like the Wake Med does. So I would like to look at this as an educational campaign to try to just keep the youth, you know, away from smoke and other things. That's kind of where I am with that. But I would like to hear more from Mr. Brown, as you mentioned, because I was not able to be at that committee meeting.
Well, I have strong personal feelings about this. I think that law about restaurants banning smoking was perhaps a top 5 state law of my lifetime, because it improved my quality of life tremendously, and I've seen numbers about the state health costs have gone down measurably because of that law being changed. I don't think it goes far enough. I think greenways are maybe even more important than parks, if not as important, to ban smoking. I jog on the Greenway, Beaver Creek Greenway a lot, and there's been times I see people smoking, and the winds are calm, and I know I'm going to breathe right through that cloud of smoke, and it makes me mad. And I feel like it takes away my freedom to have fresh air and to enjoy myself. I've also gone on hikes with the Think Apex, and I've cleaned up trash. I think it's a great program you got set up, and a lot of what the trash is on the Beaver Creek Greenway are cigarette butts, and so banning those potentially could make the litter problem go away a little bit more, which I think would be a positive thing. I work at the EPA. I study particle pollution for my job, and I know that you know, breathing in particles, whether it's from coal plants or whether it's from cigarettes, is obviously bad for your health. And so, if banning smoking and tobacco products in some of what we control as the town of Apex, if that decreases the rates of smoking, I think that's a win-win for everybody. And so, I'd like to see recreational areas put on that list too if we're going to do this tonight. I think that, you know, oh, and one other thing too is I think you talked about the kids not telling people not to smoke. I think if there are rules in place, then people feel empowered to ask the person to stop smoking. You know, I don't think we have to get the police involved, hopefully, but they can say, oh, look, there's a sign or it's a rule. Can you not stop smoking? And I hope that would be, if we do this, I hope with an educational campaign as well as empowering people, I hope that can be part of the equation. And I'm not sure a little kid will do that to an adult person, but maybe they'll feel a little more empowered to do that.
Yeah, Mayor, if I can just respond to that a little bit, that's something I feel a little bit uncomfortable about, is to have people then start having conversations about what people are doing, then can escalate to things that can get out of control. So I personally want to shy away from seeing community members at each other's throats about smoking and how that could then cause a law enforcement issue. So everyone doesn't feel comfortable doing that, and everyone's not going to be comfortable receiving that. And so I'm not going to get into like numbers and what that really means, what I'm really trying to say, but I think we have to be careful about what that could mean when people start getting into it over someone smoking, not smoking, and figure out, and I don't know the solution to that.
I think it's common decency. I think it's just manners and people respecting other people, like, and where that has gone to. If you're smoking and I'm sitting next to you at the ballpark, I'm just going to, hey, do you mind putting that out while we're sitting here? Like, I feel like we've lost that. Like, I don't know.
Well, that's correct. That's what I'm saying. There's some people that would get so agitated by that and it will become a negative thing. And that's happened, you know, so everyone doesn't have common decency, is not gonna be kind to everyone, so I don't wanna set up a situation where I'm asking people to be then telling their peer, like a peer pressure thing, and someone may respond not well to that. And so I don't wanna, you know, I believe in this, but I personally don't want to encourage people to start, you know, I don't want to say this wrong, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Everyone doesn't have the agency to be able to ask someone to stop, and that person might not be in the right headspace to actually then stop and not be kind in return.
That's fair. I mean, I don't know if it would increase or decrease conflict, because there may be less smoking to bother somebody.
There's not any smoking now. There's zero.
Well, I think we've heard some stories. I know the Greenway, I've gone through smoke when I haven't said anything, I've just been annoyed. But if there is smoke, it will be allowed right now, and I'm not sure if it will increase or decrease conflict or not, but I think you're right, there's a equal and opposite reaction at some point, which may be negative, but I think that, in my opinion, the net benefits way outweigh that net negative, or that definite negative.
I guess it's my turn. Well, I'd have to agree with Councilman Gant. Personally, I would go right across, just like Roseville did. I don't like government overreach, and maybe this is a little bit. I don't think so, though, because you're really trying to protect everyone from the individual doing something like smoking on a greenway. I mean, you can't stop it from on the highways and stuff like that. I've pulled up alongside of people on the highway with their windows open, puffing away. I had to roll my other window up just to get away from it. So I feel that. I understand about the asthma problem. Enforcement, you can't enforce something that's not a rule. So obviously, police aren't going to be enforcing something if we don't make a rule. But if they have the rule, then we can enforce it if there is a problem. And I think that's important to be able to do. We have rules for speeding on the highway, but policemen don't follow every car or stop every car when they're speeding. And this is the same sort of thing. I think it just gives a tool to kind of clean up our environment with the butts and everything that are around. I would personally go with it right across the board. That's my opinion. It's a healthy thing to do. It's, in the long term, if people would get the idea that you really shouldn't smoke, we'd save a lot of money as a society. And that people would be a lot healthier and better off for not smoking. So if we can squeeze this a little bit towards not smoking, I think it's a good idea.
Councilwoman Killingsworth,
Yes.
you've heard some thoughts from everybody. Do you have any follow-up?
I do. I agree that, I would also like to include greenways on this as well. I would like to make a request that we add to this ordinance, instead of violation of this article shall constitute an infraction punishable by, I would like to make sure that we add in a warning before just a fine, so that it gives people time to respond instead of just a direct action. So,
I don't know if we can do that.
Requires tracking, I guess, right?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to, why I'm making eyes at the chief.
I think
How is that gonna
Right.
work for you all?
in my opinion, the way I see it is if we have one particular person who is a repeat offender, who you have to, who the staff decide they can't handle by just saying, hey, put that out, and a policeman is called out there.
Yeah, so if I could jump in. So typically we leave discretion of that kind of thing to the police department.
Yeah.
So from our standpoint, it's either an ordinance or it's not. And police department, and this is part of the chief's gray area that he gets to use his giant brain for, is to figure out how to direct his staff. to find that nice middle ground between keeping the community safe and happy and cohesive, and finding the people who are truly causing the problem and need a little bit of nice community policing, if you know what I mean. And so maybe to the extent that, to the extent that the town attorney was a little nervous, maybe we can take that under advisement verbally, but I don't believe we would be able to codify something like that.
Okay.
Not without difficulty.
Okay.
Is that fair?
It's fair. It's fair. The other thing I would like to change is under section 4, it says this ordinance is effective upon enactment. I would like to delay that until January 1st, so that it gives the town time to put up signs so that people are aware when this will be starting.
Logistically, I don't think that's a problem. I would, if I could jump in, if this is to move forward, and I'm not sure if I know, but if it is to move forward, one thing I would like to ask, since it sounds like we're going to ask staff to go tweak the wording a little bit, sounds like that's where we're going, would be if council is amenable to take into consideration the concept of a designated smoking area. And specifically, let's take this town campus for an example. If we have employees here who are not allowed to smoke, are they going to have to leave campus or something like that? Or are we going to provide them with at least an area? And I'll defer to the town manager if he wants to say there's a better way to do something like that, but I want to be sensitive to that. Or if there's somebody who's at a park and they work at that park 6 hours out of their day, do they have to literally leave the park in order to have their smoke break and exercise their freedom? Or can we at least find a way to say, okay, there's certain areas? Another thought is a ball field, right? You've got your parents who are out there, they may have 2-3 games in a row with multiple kids, which happens fairly regularly. Do they have to leave their kids at the park and leave to go have a smoke break, or can they find, and town can certainly use very good discretion to determine where some areas are. I think I made my point, but is council amenable to allowing staff to consider some words that maybe include that? If we're going to send council back to do, or staff back to do a little wordsmithing.
I guess my question, thank you for that, is if I can ask the manager, with your wellness policies and things that are already in place, what do staff do? So they can't smoke in their vehicles or in the building, but they can smoke in the parking lot and the grounds, right?
Correct. Yeah, so they leave the building and have a cigarette. Parks maintenance staff obviously can smoke outdoors there, but yeah, our current ordinance prohibits it within the town buildings and in town vehicles.
Is park staff headquartered in certain parks all day?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They are based out of parks, and then they are assigned to different facilities out of those. So we have some that are some staff in the nature park maintenance facility, and then some in the community park maintenance facility.
Okay, and it's possible they'll be there a whole workday?
It's possible.
Okay.
Correct.
Possible. Okay.
Again, it just depends on where they're needed in that day, and, you know, Mr. Brown has Mr. Setzer, and he kind of oversees that part of the operation. But yeah, it's possible.
Do we know how many of our parks employees smoke? Is that a question that you guys know of your staff?
I don't have that information. I don't know, Mr. Brown, he's saying 5.
Where's he raising his hand?
How many staff do you have?
Park maintenance, 11.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's really a high ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Well, since this is an expert testimony time, it is my casual observation that people who work outdoors a lot tend to have a higher percentage of being smokers than people who work indoors a lot. And that's not substantiated by data yet. Oh, sorry, yeah, I left it off. Yeah, that's not substantiated by any data that I have, but that's just my own casual observation. So, not that I'm saying that there's a reason for it, but it would not surprise me to find out that a parks maintenance staff or anyone else who works outside, and I'm thinking of town employees, right? Because we're talking about public space, which is town property, but it also is a workplace for many people.
Well, so I have a follow-up question, I guess. So, I think somewhere in here, I'm not sure, maybe you can tell me where this falls, but, town-owned roads, sidewalks, I mean, we're essentially saying all of that, right?
No, those are not included.
That would be considered under the
Public
public
places?
spaces, yeah.
Public places,
Yeah,
which we're
sorry.
talking about making tobacco-free, right?
No.
No,
But
no.
nobody has that, though. See, nobody's done that.
And-
So we're not going purple across the board, we're going purple
Yeah.
excluding government grounds and excluding public
Right.
places.
Right. It looks like no one's doing
Right.
public places at all.
Yes, that,
Technically, we don't have a
12
motion yet, but that's what,
But that's what.
feels like it's heading that direction.
Alright, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I think the issue.
Do you have, I mean,
It's not another designated area.
Councilman Killingsworth, if you're listening to, us speak about staff, which is something we hadn't talked about for staff who is at a place, who can't really leave that place like that, like people can, or in the building, and where do they go? I mean, that is about, they need to be doing their job and not trying to figure out where to go. We don't wanna bust the morale of people who are working here as well. You know, are you willing to entertain some language to respect, the staff who choose to smoke and making sure they can do their jobs and not have to leave? And
Yes, absolutely.
I can see a designated area in different
Mhm.
different spots. One thing I hate to see is people smoking right by the entrance of the door.
Yeah, yeah.
That kind
Like,
of
what's the
defeats
point?
some of the purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, if this were to move forward, town manager would work with staff to identify appropriate places. Certainly not anywhere that would re-enter a building. I think over the last 15 to 20 years, many of us have experienced that workplace changeover, where as long as you were outside, you were fine. And the problem is, as soon as the door opens, there comes a big cloud right in the door, and you're just trying to leave to go to lunch, and it hits you in the face.
Yeah.
You know, similar to what you were describing. You know, and I've seen, and I worked at Cisco for 12 years and saw the evolution of the designated smoking area, but I think over time, people have kind of learned where's reasonable and where's not. And so maybe we don't have to go through that evolution all over again. I think we probably learn from the past, and if that's where council wishes to go, to designate or to allow staff to select strategically areas that are properly designated and signed, I think that they would probably do a really good job first try. That's my hope.
I think covered would be great too. Ventilated, but a covered designated area. would be one of my-
Like a bus stop?
So not in...
Like a bus stop, like the one presented, or the one that you want?
That one looked pretty good, actually.
Okay.
Because of the weather and that kind of
Right,
thing.
so not there in the rain smoking.
Well, if it's raining, they can't smoke, right? Put it out.
Where does it stop? Where does it stop? Maybe we should build them a separate building to work in, too. It's absurd.
Okay.
So I would like to make a motion to approve with the changes we discussed, adding greenways, implementation January 1st of this coming year, with language in addition to designated smoking areas.
So if I could, before you go, if I could make a friendly suggestion, rather than approve, can we direct staff to reword based on these things? And then bring it back to us?
Yeah.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second?
There's a second. I was
Okay.
gonna ask about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
And can we add, including some educational campaign, you know, like, thank you for not smoking here, not do not smoke here, you know, just things like that. Educational and positive
So
campaign.
that would be an ordinance and then a...
That would be implementation, not necessarily the ordinance.
Yes.
Right,
Mhm.
Yes.
right.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and just to be clear, look, since Lori, you're taking detail, did you get the details of the change? Okay, all right. Is there any clarification needed by any council members? Okay, discussion on the motion?
Yeah.
Oh,
I have just, so the draft ordinance had parks. We're adding greenways. Are we also adding government grounds?
No.
No?
All right, I heard at one point, purple all the way across with the exception of public spaces. I'm sorry?
Government grounds is what? I mean, that's our campus.
So this campus, the Public Works campus, fire stations, police station,
Parks, right, I mean,
Halley, yeah, so parks are specifically included in this, and now we're just gonna add greenways. I just wanna be sure I'm getting my
Sure,
marching
yeah.
orders
and I
correct.
heard from the person who made the motion said no,
Okay,
and the
I
person
said
who
no.
seconded it said no. So that's the motion on the table, is not government grounds.
understood, thank you.
Appreciate the clarification. If there's no further discussion, all right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
no.
All right, that passes 4-1. So staff will reword based on the feedback today and bring that back to council at a future meeting when they feel prepared. As a dissenter, did you have any final words? I know you said pretty much everything.
Education clearly is not working. Smoking statistics that we heard earlier, 430% increase in middle school, 900% almost in high school since 2011. Clearly, education is not gonna make a dent in that, or those numbers will be going down over the last 30 years, fair to say, 40 years. It's just way too much laws for no reason.
All right, thank you. Having reached the end of our open session items, at this time, I'd like to have a motion to go into closed session to consult with the town attorney regarding handling of the matter of H.H. Trinity Apex Investments at All v. Town of Apex, and also for a personnel matter. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, we're now going into closed session. Let the public be advised that we have no further items to discuss in open session. Thank you.